What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today, or I should say yesterday, there was a brand new hotfix that hit Destiny 2 that introduced a massive buff to a certain exotic that's been causing a lot of problems within the Crucible, and that exotic is the Lord of Wolves. Definitely not something I think a lot of you expected to get a buff, but here we are. And actually, it's because it's been causing so much problems in PvP that this buff exists, because this buff is a PvE buff. So yeah, if you're a PvE player like me, you potentially have a new exotic that you absolutely want to check out. So let's take a look at what happened. So here was yesterday's hotfix. As you can see, fixed an issue where the Lord of Wolves was increasing ability damage in addition to its own. That doesn't really sound like a big buff. Well, it wasn't necessarily. That's just what happened yesterday, and it was the re-enabling of the Lord of Wolves, because in the actual patch that buffed it, Bungie screwed up and it was doing some pretty weird stuff, so they actually had to disable it. So as of yesterday, you can now actually utilize this weapon. So let's go to the patch that happened a couple weeks ago where this buff happened. So as you can see right here, it's basically been redesigned. So they reduced the ADS accuracy penalty from 10x to 3x. They removed the previously existing 25% universal base damage buff. But then here's the part I'm interested in. They added 40% additional PvE damage buff. Then they removed the 50% critical hit multiplier penalty, and it now fires in full auto. So even if it technically got a little bit of a nerf in PvE because of the 25% universal base damage buff that applied in PvE, that 40% additional PvE damage should still be a net positive. It should still come out the other end doing actually pretty significantly more damage than it was. But again, it was also basically completely redesigned. So here's how the Lord of Wolves works in-game right now. If you've not been playing Destiny 2 for quite a while, yeah, it's going to be quite a bit different. So in its normal configuration, if you press or hold the trigger, you get that accurate 5-round burst, pretty much the same as when it was first released. However, if you hold reload, it switches to the Release the Wolves configuration, and here, if you tap the trigger, you're going to get another 5-round burst, seemingly shoots a bit faster, and also you can see a massive amount of inaccuracy is introduced. The bullets are pretty widespreading compared to the original version, but also, importantly, the big change is if you hold the trigger, it is completely fully automatic. Like, it will shoot all 30 rounds of its magazine in a matter of, a second. Like, it'll just evaporate those, again, shooting completely full auto. So, as a result of all this, the Lord of Wolves has had its PvE damage output increased significantly, because not only do you have that 40% raw damage increase, but you also have a significant increase to the rate of fire. Even if Bungie didn't literally increase the rate of fire, they eliminated those burst delays, so you're just chucking out way more damage than you otherwise would. So is this now like a viable option to use in terms of damage output for PvE? Well, as you can see right here, I tested it against this pretty chunky Lost Sector boss, and in normal mode with the 5-round burst, it takes this guy down in about 2 megs, and it does so pretty quickly. But then in the Release the Wolves mode, whew, you absolutely body this guy. Now, it's still going to take 2 magazines, but because of how fast it's shooting and the reload speed increase provided by the catalyst, it just takes no time at all to kill this guy. And to put this into perspective, let's compare it to a different shotgun here, the first in, last out with Vorpal Weapon, generally considered to be one of the best PvE slug shotguns in the game. And as you can see, when I take on this same boss, it takes significantly longer than just a 1 magazine burst down of the Lord of Wolves. So in terms of raw damage output, again, the Lord of Wolves is 100% now worth looking at after the buff. But that's not without its downsides. So in using the new and improved, well, quote-unquote improved Lord of Wolves, some things that really stand out are firstly the inaccuracy, right? If you're in that release the wolves state, your damage is insane, but you really need to be like right up in enemies' faces. And it seems that you have a pretty significant damage drop-off after not too long. The 5 burst version can hit some enemies at relatively okay ranges, but especially the Release the Wolves version, the inaccuracy combined with the range drop-off, you need to be like touching enemies basically in order to do your maximum DPS. Another problem you're going to run into is ammo management. Like, I was running out of ammo with this thing constantly because you just chew through an entire magazine so quickly, and you only get 10 rounds for a finder brick, for example, that you're really just going to be constantly searching for ammo. Now, if you are doing something like a raid or a dungeon boss encounter, that's not going to matter as much because you're saving your ammo for the boss DPS phase, right? Like, imagine you're doing the War Priest encounter within King's Fall. You're pretty much just using your primary and abilities to deal with the adds until it's time to damage the boss, and then you whip out your heavies and specials. So in this scenario, you would run up to the War Priest, plant a well with Lunafaction boots to help that reload and go to town. And my goodness, with how fast this is shooting, the fact that unlike other shotguns where they reload 1 shell at a time, this is magazine fed, so you get that other magazine in super quick again with Lunafaction, and you're just pumping in a huge amount of damage. Man, I think you could be able to take down a couple raid bosses with this thing, no joke. However, that brings up another potential downside of this weapon. Like I said, you have to be right up in enemies' faces in order to do the maximum amount of damage. What happens when you get up in pretty much every big boss's face in this game? They do a stomp mechanic, and you can see right here this was happening quite a bit with the Headless One bosses in the Haunted Lost sector, and that is partially why swords are so good for up close and personal DPS, because if you get stomped away, you can just sword swing instantly back to the boss. You can't do that with a shotgun. So, as a result of this patch, the Lord of Wolves is schlapping in terms of DPS output. It is hitting extremely hard. That's not to say it isn't without a bunch of significant downsides. Will this become meta? I don't exactly think so. However, this is something that you should absolutely try out, because even if you're just running normal content, if you can whip this thing out for a boss, you can absolutely shred that boss if you set up a good scenario. But also, in the future, if Bungie adds a boss that you can DPS very close and it doesn't stomp, the Lord of Wolves is absolutely something you should consider in terms of DPS. And so guys, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.